Hello and welcome to Learn Data. It's great to have you on this channel. I'm Nilesh and in this video we'll continue to learn about pandas. In this video we'll talk about group by and the intuition behind how group by works, and then we'll look at the coding scenarios where we'll try to group by using column names and also row indices. Finally, we'll look at how to use a custom function to perform a group by. Now let's look at this table. Here we have a data set which has columns year, animal, and number of YouTube videos in millions. I just made those up. And here we can see that if we are interested in trying to find out what are the total number of videos for cats and dogs on YouTube, then we could use a group by to get that number. So what it actually would do is we would pick just the cat. So we have in 2015 we have 10 million cats. In 2020 we have 20 million cats, and similarly for dogs we have 11 and 30 million dogs. So when we perform a group by, we actually separate out these two data sets. So the cat is separated out as shown here in yellow highlight, and then the dog data is separated out, which is shown here in blue. Now, and once you separate out the data sets, we can then combine those. So these two could be added. 10 plus 2 is equal to 30, and then for dog it will be 11 plus 30 is equal to 41, and that's going to be the final answer. So the group by sum for if we group by on animal, then the output that we would get is cat has 30 and dog has 41 total number of videos. Here in this example we excluded the year, but you can also combine a group by with more than one column. So you could use year and animal. So that will give you a different sum. Now let's get into Jupyter Notebook and start coding. Here I've already created a new notebook and imported two libraries, NumPy and Pandas. And for dataset, I've created these two data frames, DF and DF2. For the DF data frame, these are the indices. We will use them later on, but right now we won't use them. So I'm going to run this. So this is the data frame which has columns A, B, which has text in it, and we are going to do a group by on those. And then for df2 we have the seasons. We are going to use a custom function when we work with this data frame. So let's get started with a simple group by, and you've probably used this in our previous videos, seen this in our previous videos. And if we use the data frame df, which is this one, and if you are trying to get a sum of this data frame based on column A, for example, if we separate out Z, then we have two Z's, and when we add these for column C, we'll have 11 plus 2, that is 13. Then for Y we would have 3 plus 4, which is 7, and B is just one value, so it will be 5. So when we go ahead and do a group by on the data frame df, where we use the column A on which we are grouping by and then use the sum of this, we get the output which is B, Y, Z, and we have 5, 7 and 13 as we checked earlier. So one thing you'll notice here is that the group by automatically sorts the group. So we have B starting in the first position and Z in the last position. In addition to using just one column, we could go ahead and use more than one column. So if we were to do a group by with column A and B together, then that's also doable. So in this case we get a group by using both the columns. So if we'll go scroll back up, here for Z is associated with the Q and S from column B, and again Y is associated with Q and S. So they are all separated out, and therefore there's no addition going on here. So total number of rows is 5 in the output, and that's the same as what we had in the data frame. But if the data frame were different, then those two would get add up and we get the sum. Now moving on, let's see how we can use index to perform a group by. So using index, and before we do that, here now we'll go ahead and set the index to the data frame that we have already created. And now if we look at the data frame, we have this multi-index. We have rank and animal. So rank is level 0 index and animal is level 1 index. Here if we can specify the level when we are doing a group by, so df.group by, and here if we specify level is equal to df.index, and let's say we want to use, if there were more than 2 levels and if we wanted to use all of them except one, then this is how you do it. Level df.index names difference, and here you would specify the name of the index that we do not need. So let's say if we do not need the animal, then you specify that there, and then if you put sum, then we in the output we get the group by, which is on the rank column, which has groups 1, 2 and 3. So we have these 1, 2 and 3, and the numeric columns C and D are used in the output, where 1 has 11 and 2, so 11 plus 2 is 13, and that's what we have in the output. Now similar to this, you could also go ahead and directly specify the level of index. So group by, and if you specify level is equal to rank, and then specify sum, you get the same output. So this is also one way to directly use the name of the index in the group by command. Now let's look at how we can use a custom function, and what custom function, and what we are going to do here is we are instead, if you've noticed here, the default axis when we are doing a group by is axis 0. So if I go ahead and copy this and paste it here, and here if we specify that axis is equal to 0, then we get the same output. However, now in this particular custom function, we are going to use a group by where axis is going to be 1. So we are going to add based on the rows. So we are going to do addition such as 11 plus 11, then 2 plus 2, etc. Now for that, we are going to use the data frame df2, and here as you can see, we have these column names, which is season 1990, 1995, season 2000, and let's say in this if you run into such a data set where you know that the column names have year in them, and if there was some way you could isolate the year and then group by based on that particular century, let's say all 1900s in one column and then all 2000s in another column, so that can be done. So to do that, we need to create a separate group for these first two columns, and then the last column would be in a separate group. So let's give a column a function name group by, say, century, and here when we use this in group by, we are going to get the name of the column. So the x would be name of the column. So now if 19 is in x, then we'll say return 1900s, and if that's not the case, then we are going to say return 2000s, and that's the function we are going to use here. Now if we go ahead and say df2 dot group by, and we specify the name of the function, so group by century, and axis is equal to 1. Now we can store this in a variable, let's say g, and if we look at g, we can see that it's the group by object. Now if we look at the groups within this, we can see that it has already created two groups, 1900s and 2000s, and 1900s has two columns in it, which is season 1990 and season 1995, and the 2000s group has only one column, which is season 2000. We can use this to perform the sum, so you could say g dot sum, and you'll get the output where the 1900s are added together, so these two are added, so this becomes 2, 4, 6, 8 and 10, so that's what we get. 2000s is just one column, and therefore we get the same numbers in the output. So you instead of writing g dot sum, you could also use the entire code here and then type sum after at the end of it, and that way also you can get the same output. Finally, let's look at how we can do a group by on a series and how we can handle duplicate values. So in series, let's say we have a series x is equal to, again we'll use the same 1900, and then we have a couple of 2000s in there, 2000, and now if we create a series, a is equal to pd dot series 1 2, and then maybe 30 20 10. So that's the series a we have, and we have the list a x, sorry. Now if we were to group by, so if you do a dot group by using x, and then if you look at the first, here we can see that we did a group by based on this list x that was provided, and based on the positions of these values, so 1900s are matched with what's in the series here, and the first value is taken. So for example, for 1900, these are the first two values, 1 and 2, and out of that the first would be 1, and similar the last three are 2000s, so the first in that case is 30. So in this case that's the output, so there is no sorting done. 30 is as is, and that exists in the series. Similar to first, we could also go ahead and check last, and when you look at last, we get 2 for 1900s and 10 for 2000s. Finally, we could also go ahead and you get the sum, so a dot group by x, and if you take the sum group by, and if you get the sum, these numbers are added, so 1 plus 2 is 3, and then we have 30 plus 20 plus 10 is 60, and that's what we get in the output. So that was it for this video. In this, I hope you learned how group by works, what is the intuition behind group by, and how we can use a custom function to perform a group by along the rows. In next video, we'll continue this discussion and look at a few other topics in group by in pandas. Please like, share and subscribe. To subscribe, you can hit the bell icon at the bottom of this video. Thank you, and I hope to see you all in the next video.